Ever feel like fear kind of holds you back? You know, like it's this invisible
Yeah.
thing, just keeps you from really going after what you want.
It's a common struggle, for sure.
So we're doing a deep dive on that today, exploring that whole fear thing, self-doubt, and how to, cultivate the discipline to break free.
Sounds like a plan.
And we've got some big names to learn from today. Tony Robbins, David Goggins, Les Brown, Mel Robbins, Jay Shetty, Gary Vaynerchuk, all tackling this from their own perspective.
It's amazing, isn't it, how these motivational powerhouses, they all have their own style, but they seem to agree. Understanding fear, that's step one.
Right. And Tony Robbins, he doesn't mess around. He just comes out and says it. Fear. It's the enemy. Straight up calls it out.
No mincing words with Tony.
He says it's the number one thing holding us back in everything, our relationships, careers, everything. And, it really hit me because it's not always this huge, obvious thing, is it?
Oh, absolutely. It can be sneaky, creeping into our decisions without us even realizing it.
Totally. Like it's insidious. And Robbins, he talks about how fear, it makes us operate from this place of scarcity. We react out of fear instead of responding to possibility, abundance even.
It's like we're bracing for impact instead of, opening ourselves up to what could be.
Yes, exactly. And there's this other thing, right? He talks about how fear is almost weaponized against us.
Especially these.
Hal, tell me about it. It's like everywhere you turn. It's like constant negativity everywhere we look, particularly online. And it creates this environment of like outrage and anxiety. And Robbins, he argues it plays right into our deepest need for certainty and significance. We all want to matter.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught in that spiral, without even knowing it's happening. But Robbins, he offers an antidote. Faith.
Interesting. So how does he define faith exactly?
He uses this very simple example. Driving. Every time we get behind the wheel, right, we're putting faith in this belief that we won't crash, even though realistically it could happen. So he says we need to tap into that inherent faith in other areas of life.
So instead of always focusing on what could go wrong.
We shift our mindset to believe in our ability to handle whatever comes our way.
Okay, I like that. So how do we actually do that?
Well, self-awareness is key, right? Robbins points out these two core fears that hold most of us back, the fear of not being enough and that fear that we won't be loved because of it. You ever felt that?
Oh, absolutely. Like he's tapping into something universal about being human, right? I think most people, on some level, they can relate to that.
100%.
But recognizing it, like Robbins suggests, that's huge.
Oh, it's a game changer. Because recognizing those fears, that's how we start to question those beliefs and choose a different path.
Choose a different path. Okay, I like where this is going. So how do we do that? How do we choose a different path?
This is where Mel Robbins' research on the science of fear, it just blew my mind.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What does science have to say about all this?
Well, Mel Robbins, she explains that fear and excitement, physiologically, they're the same thing.
Wait, seriously?
It's our mind that interprets those sensations and decides what they mean. Your heart's racing could mean you're terrified or you're totally pumped. All depends on how you're thinking about it.
Wow. So our body is doing the same thing, whether we're facing danger or opportunity. It's all about perception.
Exactly. And that's incredibly empowering because it means we can train ourselves to reframe those sensations. We don't have to be controlled by our fear.
That's amazing. So instead of trying to calm down when you feel that surge of fear, you're saying we should lean into it, reframe it as excitement.
Exactly. And Mel Robbins, she has this great tactic for doing just that. She calls it the 5-second rule. But before we get into that, let's see what some of the other speakers have to say about building courage and, that discipline to move forward even when we're afraid.
Okay, let's do it.
When it comes to pushing past limitations and really embracing the struggle, David Goggins, he's in a league of his own.
Goggins, yeah. He's all about radical self-responsibility, isn't he?
Absolutely. And he challenges this whole idea that we have to go out and find our purpose in the world.
Oh, interesting. So if we're not looking for it out there, where is it?
He believes that the ultimate purpose, it's self-improvement. He says we're all searching for external validation when real growth, true growth, comes from pushing ourselves further than we think we can go. He even says you are your own purpose, which is kind of mind-blowing when you really think about it.
It's like instead of asking, what's my purpose?
Yeah.
It's asking, what am I willing to do to become the best version of myself?
Right. Yes. It's about embracing the struggle, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, because that's where the growth happens. And Goggins, he walks the walk. He talks about pushing himself to the absolute limit, even when there's no competition, no reward. It's about proving it to himself, building that unshakable self-belief.
I can see how that connects to what this inner belief in yourself, even when it's tough. But how do we actually do that?
Yeah.
How do we go from, like, doubting ourselves to feeling unstoppable?
Well, it starts with taking action, even small steps. This is where Jay Shetty's perspective on discipline comes in. He talks about the power of simple discipline.
Simple discipline, what does that look like?
It's those little things we do every day that build momentum. Things like making your bed, getting your workout clothes ready, sticking to a schedule. They might seem small, but they build trust in yourself, which paves the way for bigger things.
Right, it's like you're priming your mind for action. Reminds me of what Mel Robbins says about how even just getting dressed for a workout makes you more likely to actually work out.
Exactly. It's those small wins that stack up. You start to believe, hey, I can do this.
Speaking of small changes leading to big results, Les Brown, he's a big proponent of the Pareto principle, right? That whole 80-20 rule.
Absolutely. Les Brown applies that to personal development. He says that focusing on a few key disciplines can impact every area of your life. Waking up early, for example, or prioritizing your health. Those small changes, they can lead to huge shifts in productivity, energy, well-being.
So it's not about overhauling your whole life overnight. It's about finding those key areas where a little discipline makes a big difference.
Exactly. And it's about consistency, showing up for yourself every day, even when you don't feel like it.
That's where I struggle sometimes. One day I'm super motivated. The next day, bam, fear and doubt, back to square one.
That's so normal. Everyone deals with those moments of self-doubt. Remember what Mel Robbins said. Fear and excitement, they're the same physiological response. It's all in how we interpret it. And she's got this practical tool, a way to interrupt that negative spiral, shift our state. It's called the 5-second rule.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that. How does it work again?
So let's say you're about to do something scary, a presentation, or finally starting that passion project you've been putting off. You feel that familiar fear, heart's racing, mind's full of doubts. Instead of letting those feelings take over, you count down from 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you take action.
Wait, you just count backwards? That's it. How does that help?
It interrupts the fear response. You see, when we hesitate, when we overthink, we give that fear time to grow. But action, taking action, even a small action, it breaks the spell.
So you're short-circuiting the fear before it can take hold.
Exactly. And Mel Robbins, she says to pair that countdown with what she calls an anchor thought.
An anchor thought.
It's a positive statement or a visualization that you focus on during the countdown. It could be something like, I am capable, I am ready, or even just picturing yourself succeeding.
So you're replacing that fear-based thought with a more empowering one, reframing the whole situation.
Precisely. And our brains are amazing, so adaptable. The more we do this, the easier it becomes.
This is all fantastic advice, but I bet some people listening are thinking, okay, that's great for those everyday fears, but what about the big stuff? The fear of failure, judgment, really putting yourself out there.
Those are valid fears, for sure. And that's where Gary Vaynerchuk's perspective really resonates. He's all about playing to your strengths and drowning out the noise from your critics, both the internal and the external ones.
I've heard him talk about that. He's big on self-awareness, figuring out what you excel at, and then going all in.
Yes. He says so many people get caught up comparing themselves to others, trying to be good at everything, when really success comes from identifying your unique strengths and going after them.
He doesn't sugarcoat it either. He's all about action. Just start, even if it's messy, even if you're not sure it'll work. He believes learning from failure is just as valuable as the win.
Oh, absolutely. And he's big on tuning out the haters. He reminds us that not everyone is going to get it, and that's okay. The important thing is to be true to yourself and your goals.
So much good stuff here. It's like a masterclass in self-belief and overcoming fear. But we haven't touched on discipline as much. How does that fit into all of this? We've talked about building those small disciplines, but what about the bigger leaps? How do we go from like battling self-doubt to really feeling unstoppable?
That kind of transformation, it often needs a different level of commitment. Goggins and some of the others we've talked about, they bring up this idea of burning the boats.
Burning the boats? What does that even mean?
It's a metaphor, you know. It's about eliminating any chance of backing out. Think of those old school warriors landing on enemy shores. They'd burn their boats. No going back. They're all in. Victory or nothing.
Intense. So how do we apply that to, like, regular life? overcoming fear.
It's about getting to that point where your goals are so clear, your commitment is so strong, failure isn't even an option. It's that no matter what mindset. Goggins, especially, he believes that level of commitment. That's what builds mental toughness.
And for him, mental toughness is being okay with discomfort,
Right.
Pushing past those self-imposed limits.
Exactly. He says most of us, we quit too soon, right when things get hard, but he's all about that being where the growth is. Outside that comfort zone. He has this line, hope isn't a strategy. You can't control hope, but you can control your actions. Your actions build belief.
Wow, your actions build belief. That's powerful. So it's like the more we act in line with our goals, even when it's hard, our belief in ourselves grows stronger.
Yes. And that belief, that faith in yourself, that's what gets you through. When doubts come up, when you hit setbacks, when you're tempted to give up, it's that inner voice that says, you've got this, even when you're not so sure.
So we've got these great tools for self-belief, handling fear, building discipline, but we're human. There are going to be times when it's just overwhelming. Stress, feeling stuck, the whole 9 yards. What do we do then?
Even these motivational giants, they have those moments. Remember Tony Robbins' 90-second rule?
Remind me how that one goes again.
Robbins, he admits he gets stressed, feels negative sometimes, but he doesn't let it run the show. He gives himself 90 seconds to feel it fully. No more, no less. Then he shifts his state.
Shifts his state? Like how?
Physical movement, focused breathing, jumping jacks, changing his posture, deep breaths, things like that. He's interrupting the negativity by changing his physical state.
So that whole mind-body connection thing.
Yes. Robbins believes strongly that how we feel physically impacts how we feel emotionally. If we can change our body language, our breath, we change how we experience those emotions.
It's like we have more control than we think. We can train ourselves to react differently, almost like using those negative emotions as fuel instead of roadblocks.
Exactly. And the more we use these techniques, the 5-second rule, the 90-second rule, the simple disciplines, focusing on our strengths, the easier it gets to handle those tough times and really live up to our potential.
This whole deep dive has been eye-opening. We've uncovered so much about fear, believing in ourselves, the power of discipline. If you had one big takeaway for our listeners today, what would it be?
You are capable of so much more than you think. Don't let fear stop you from living a life that truly lights you up. Choose courage, choose discipline, choose yourself.
Amazing advice. What a reminder to step into our power and create the lives we want. Thanks for joining us on this journey into conquering fear and building discipline. Until next time, keep diving deep.